So welcome everyone. I'm sure we'll still have a couple of people joining us from the other section here. But if you want to follow along at your own pace, I am going to put in the chat the URL for my slides. So feel free to copy and paste that and to put that in your browser and you'll see that. Oh, wow, third session, wonderful. Yes, it would be useful for ESL. That's a great question. And if you have questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to put them in the Q&A and I will get to it as soon as I can. And thank you for understanding. Also, after my last session, I ran out of time and I have a ton of slides this time, so I may run out of time again. So just be aware that if I run out of time, you can absolutely email me. I had 50 emails after my last session and I got to all of them. So please email me. No question is a silly question. I'm happy to help you in any way I can. All right. So let's get started. We're going to talk about language teachers. Woo! Special shout out to all the Latin teachers out there. But I've been a department chair for 5 years. I'm stepping down from that role, but it was such a fun role. Oh, someone asked what my email is. It's latintechtools@gmail.com. And I will get back to you as soon as I can. All right. So again, if you want to follow along, tinyurl.com/Quizlet Language 2022. My name is Maureen Lamb. I am the Latin teacher and Dean of Academic Technology and Innovative Pedagogy at the Ethel Walker School in Simsbury, Connecticut. I also teach graduate courses on language pedagogy and instructional technology through Idioma Education. I love teaching, learning, sharing learning at conferences, and creating an inclusive classroom experience. I use Quizlet daily to help engage my students and keep organized. And I've been using it for many years. This is my 5th unconference. I love presenting and I love presenting for ed tech that I can really get behind. And Quizlet's one of those go-to things that I use every single day. And it was so helpful for me, especially during the pandemic, to have Quizlet as a wonderful curator for all of my Quizlet sets. So we're going to go over quickly the basics. We're going to go over beyond the basics. Then we'll go over student individual review options, collaborative review options, interpersonal speaking, interpretive reading and listening, and the new expert solutions at Quizlet. And I know for some of you, interpersonal speaking, interpretive reading, listening, those are our buzzwords for language teaching. So that'll be fun to look at. Okay, wonderful. Oh, if you want my slides, from yesterday or the date for both presentations yesterday, again, feel free to email me. I'm happy to share slides. It's not proprietary. I'm happy to share so you can take a look. All right, we're going to do basics first. Super basics, but it's good, not the bad kind of basic. So to create a set, click on that wonderful create button. And you'll notice here that I have a dark background. I go into my settings and create the dark background because I think it's more accessible and easier for me to look at. But when you log into Quizlet, you'll probably see the white background with different colors. And that's how it is for most people. You can also use this link that I've added, quizlet.com/create set. But don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. One of the wonderful things about Quizlet is that you can search for sets. If you're looking for something, chances are teachers have done it before. And gee, I bet a lot of people are in this situation this year. Sometimes I had to cover for my colleagues this year when they were out sick. And so for 2 weeks, I was teaching French. For another 2 weeks, I was teaching English. I covered for Spanish classes. And when I did, I used Quizlet to help me a lot. I would often use Quizlet Checkpoint to do a quick check-in and kind of see what students knew. So let's say we were doing relative pronouns or something. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go in. I'm going to find all the Spanish sets on relative pronouns and see what they can do and what they can't do and see what I need to review. And so go in and see what other people have done first. Don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel because there's so much out there already. And one of the things I like to do is go in, find a set that someone else has made, and then make a copy of it so that I can modify it however I need it for my classroom. And I do that all the time. And feel free to do that with mine, especially Latin teachers out there. I have basically the whole AP Latin syllabus on there. So feel free to use that in any way you see fit. You can also do an advanced search, So when you do an advanced search, you can search by study sets, by textbooks, by questions, by users, by classes, and by courses. So those are all different ways that you can do that. And something I strongly recommend you do is create classes. Now, this is really important. If you are a teacher who has Quizlet Plus and you create a class and add students to it, or students join by link, or students are added to the class somehow, those students can use Learn and Test for free. So that is something that's really important. And if you're adding sets that you've created with custom distractors, also known as multiple choice answers, then they can access those for free as well in their Quizlet Plus feature. So that's something really cool to keep in mind. So if you create a class, you enter in your class name, you can add a description. And this is really important. You can allow class members to add and remove sets, or you can allow class members to invite new members. So those are important features you can turn on and off there. And you can choose which school you will be at as well. So that's important. When you're inviting members, you can invite them by email or by username. They often have Quizlet usernames. You can also share an automatic join link. I think that's what I'm going to do this year. That seems to work really well for my students. So I'm going to go into Canva and I'm going to share, or Canvas, not Canva, and I'm going to share the automatic join link there. Or you could link it to Google Classroom, either way. And again, if you add students to the class, they can access Learn and Test for free. I'm saying it again. So when you're adding sets to your classroom, you can either create a new set or you can search for sets. So you don't have to add just sets that you've done. And here's my pro tip for this. Create folders of sets that you want to use in class. That's really important. So then you can keep your sets organized. And then when it comes time to add them to your classes, let's say you have a bunch of sets you're using one year, then create a folder for those sets. So let's say you have a bunch of sets you're using and they're about a text you're reading. And so you create a folder for that text, you add all the sets to that text. Then the next year, it's super easy. When you're creating that classroom, when you get to that unit, just add all the sets from that folder. So that's really, really simple. Again, about custom distractors, also known as multiple choice answers. So most of the multiple choice answers, if you don't add these, are machine learning based, which is really cool. It means that they pick options that could be options, but it's really fun too to add your own custom distractors. And actually, what I do often is when I'm adding these, I'll do something like, okay, I'll give students a multiple choice homework worksheet that I did that's all reading comprehension. And then the next day, instead of going over the homework, we'll start out with a Quizlet checkpoint. And I'll have created all of these multiple choice questions, and then I'll put them right in my Quizlet sets so that we can play checkpoint as a class to review the homework. So it's really fun. I get to see how many questions students actually answered correctly. And I get a real sense of what students understood and what they didn't understand. Walter just said he cannot see the presentation. Walter, if you want to, I can send you this afterwards. I'll give you my email, okay? Sorry about that. And one of the best features I think of Classroom is being able to see student progress. So I can see when I've given students a set, let's say I've seen them, yes, they've done learning, they've done flashcards, they've done test, or they've done match. So I can see which ones that students actually do, which is really helpful. And that helps me as a teacher to know what they're doing and what they can do. And so it's super fun. You can also see student progress. You can see which ones students miss, which ones they sometimes miss, and which ones they got right all the time. So that's really important too. Again, you can gauge where your students are and how much they've learned from this. So that's really, really helpful. All right, so now we're going to move on to beyond the basics. I know there are a bunch of questions coming in here now. And someone's asking, how do you create your own questions with custom distractors? Rebecca, that's a great question. If you have a Quizlet Plus account, when you go to your set, if you click on where you're putting in the answer, you'll see the custom distractors come up. And basically that just means you can put in your own answers. So when this is asked as a multiple choice question, then you're able to do it with this, have that be the answers with the student. Another question from Rosanna, I create classes per Spanish level. Can I erase the students of the class level at the end of the school year? I would actually create a brand new class. What I do is I'll create like Latin 1, 2021, 2022, and then next year I'll be Latin 1, 2022, 2023. But what I'll do so that I don't lose all the work I've done in that class is make sure that I'm saving all of those sets in folders so that for each unit, I have folders of sets. Let's see. Can they join your class using Microsoft? They can, but I would send them the automatic join link. That would be the best way to do that. That's a good question, Debbie. Rosalina asks, how can I check on the progress of specific students? I mean, can I view their names or associated email? You can see what they've done. You can't see their exact progress, except if you're playing Checkpoint, then you can see which they answered correctly or incorrectly a little bit. That digs down a little bit more. That's a great question, Rosalina. That's why Checkpoint and Quizlet Live and Quizlet in general is really something that's more for formative assessment. This should not be used as something that's summative assessment. When you're doing tests, you might be able to use some of the questions, and you can even print out tests now, which is so exciting. But I would really stick to using it as mostly a formative assessment, if that makes sense. Okay. And the automatic join, someone asked, Christine, where is the automatic join option in Canvas? I'm just going to share a link. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Okay, I think I've answered all of the questions now. Thank you so much. I know there'll be more though, don't worry. Oh, Evelyn asks how to split a set. Ooh, I created sets that are too long. So Evelyn, what I would do is I would star the ones that you want students to concentrate on, or I would copy that set and then delete the ones you don't want in there. That's a great idea. I do that all the time if I need it. Okay. So now we're going to go to beyond the basics. We're going to talk about rich text, sound, pictures, and diagrams, which I honestly think is specifically helpful for language teachers. So for rich text, I love highlighting, and we all know that students need a lot of repetition of vocabulary, tons of it. And really repetition and context is one of the best ways to do this. So I like to use highlighting, underlining, bold, italicizing to color code the text, to mark up the text, or if I'm doing vocabulary, just vocabulary in context, or little passages in context, and say like, tell me, so I'll do a little passage and then maybe highlight something in yellow, and then the answer would be, tell me what this construction is. You know, like caveat is don't repeat them, because if you repeat them, or if you're going to repeat them, put in the target language so that students know which answer belongs to which one. Another really cool feature is that you can add accent marks. So for example, when Quizlet recognized that this sentence was in Latin, all of these macrons appeared so that I could add macron marks. And as a teacher who teaches ancient Greek as well, when I start typing in Greek, the entire Greek keyboard comes down. So it will recognize it, but you also have the option to pick your language. So I think this is really awesome, and it's something that can be very, very helpful. So I would definitely take advantage of this feature and play around with it a little bit, see how it works. For pictures, you can either search for an internet image. So here's some cute doggies, or you can add your own image if you have Quizlet Plus. So you can upload an image from your computer, or if you have the app on your phone or tablet, you can upload the image as well. So that's pretty cool. And again, you can use the app to upload photos to cards. There's also a new scanning feature. You can actually scan text to cards. I haven't gotten a chance to play with that yet, but I'm definitely going to check it out. And audio. As language teachers, we know how important it is for students to be able to listen while they read the language, listen to and read the language, just listen to the language. All of those are super important for language learning. And that's something you can't get with traditional flashcards. But the audio in Quizlet is actually quite good. So you can either listen to the Quizlet audio, which is pre-made for you, and it's actually quite good for Greek. I was really enjoying that for my Greek classes here. Or you can record your own audio by holding down the space bar to record. So you hold it down, you say whatever you need to say, and then you let go for it to stop recording. So it's very easy to use, and I highly recommend it. And again, you can listen to the Quizlet pre-recorded audio, see if it meets what you need, and then add that to cards as well. Another wonderful feature that I love about Quizlets are diagrams. This is a Quizlet Plus feature, but it's something that I have to say has been a game changer for my teaching the last few years. And so we're going to talk about using pictures, blurred text, shapes and points, and maps and images. So for me, I like to take a picture of a text that we're reading. And then I'll put it up there and I'll mark it and I'll ask different questions about it. So here you can see sometimes I marked a couple of words and I'll ask a couple of words about it, or maybe I'll do a whole passage and then I'll say what's happening in this passage. So I'll ask reading comprehension questions, I'll ask vocabulary questions, I'll ask grammar questions, all using the screenshot of this passage. And so this is me showing squares, but you can also do blur out part, which is so fun. And I like to do this if I'm giving a worksheet, I'll blur out the answers and then students can put the answers in. Again, this is a wonderful quick homework check. You can also blur out parts of a diagram and add terms. I'm going to show you later on where I've blurred out parts of a Roman bathhouse and then had students answer in the target language. So those are ways you can use blurring out as well. Predictive activities, what comes next? Those are really good for that. You can also use an assessment check. So let's say this is a vocab quiz that I gave. And then after the vocab quiz, just to see how students did, I would put these points on each of the words where I was testing them in context so that they could go through it together in doing Quizlet Live or Quizlet Checkpoint, just to do a quick check with them. I also like using points on pictures and maps to have students identify what's going on, like I was talking about before. So this, for example, are the travels of Hannibal. And so as Hannibal is going around the Mediterranean, students are identifying where he is. And so we're reading Hannibal in the target language, and we're going over this map to have this cultural background. And again, this is the Roman bathhouse. They had to put in the names in Latin, not in English. And so by using this, I was able to have students identify that. And I love using visuals. I feel like visuals are a great way to connect students to the learning. So I think that's a real advantage of Quizlet. Okay, I'm just going to check the questions for a minute here. David says, I wish uploaded recordings were options. David, I've actually used uploaded recordings, but because if you're playing something on your computer, you can push down the space bar to do that as well. Amy asks, would you use the printed test as summative assessments? I might use it as a practice assessment. I wouldn't use it as my actual summative assessment, but you absolutely could if you wanted to. Moyer asks, what's the difference between study sets and folders? Study sets are the different cards, and so you get the terms and definitions. The folders are where you can keep those sets. So the actual cards themselves with terms and definitions make up the study sets. The folders are where you can store those sets. Let's see, other questions. Marilyn asks, how did you post a diagram? So I took a screenshot on my computer and then I dragged it to where you can add diagrams. Again, this is a Quizlet Plus feature. Winnie has asked, can students record? Yes, if students have Quizlet Plus, which most of mine do, they can absolutely record their voices and their answers. Let's see, what else? Amy asks if I could go up and seeing repeating and adding target language. So as much as possible, I'm not sure exactly what your question is, but I'm going to say that I think it's somewhere between 17 to 40 repetitions of a word in context is how long it takes to actually acquire language. And so the more we can add repetition, the better as we're doing language learning. So that's really important. Let's see. So here we're going to talk about learn, test, adding sets, and student progress. Oh, I see another one. Let's see. Oh, David asks, are you going to go over a timeline? So I have an example of a timeline, David, that I'd be absolutely happy to share with you. What I would do is I would take a screenshot of that timeline, just like I would for the bathhouse or for another picture, and I would add dots to that timeline. When I added dots to that timeline, then I would add the different events on the timeline, and students would have to fill in those events, if that makes sense. Okay. So again, we're going to go over learn, test, adding sets, and student progress. Thank you for your patience with the questions. Oh, someone asked, Tina, please use the Q&A, but this says that you don't see student progress on Google Classroom. You don't actually. So for Tina, you have to look on Quizlet to see student progress in the classes. They can join using Google Classroom, but you can only see student progress from Quizlet itself. So learn and test are the free options that students have if you have a Quizlet Plus account, and they can do the sets that you've added to their class for free, which is really great. So these are some sets that I added to Latin 2. And this is what comes up when you go to learn. You can do quick study, you can memorize it all, or you can learn and apply. Or you can even skip personalization if you want to. And I really like that there are different options. You can shuffle terms or not, or so you can either shuffle terms or they'll appear in the same order they are in the set. You can choose whether students are answering in the target language or English. You can also do exact answer or one answer, or you can do study start or all. So if you've gone through and started some of the deck, you can choose some of those as well. Looking at Quizlet Live, there are a lot of different things that are really cool about Quizlet Live. We've got classic individual, we've got classic group, we've got checkpoint distractors. So if we have Quizlet Plus and we've added those distractors, then we can play checkpoint and those distractors will show up during checkpoint. There's also this wonderful option when you're starting a checkpoint to toggle on and off shows up on the bottom. That's why I'm going down like that. So you can choose checkpoint write, which has 10 additional questions where students write the answers. So that's something that's really cool as well. So Quizlet Live Classic is the one you've seen, the one you love, the one that your students are probably asking you for. This one is really cool. And what I really like about it, number one, it's competition. And there's something really fun about group competition and having students talk to each other. There's also something really cool about the fact that all of the groups have animal names. So there's a level of anonymity here. And I really like that. I like that it gives students kind of the freedom to do what they're doing, but it also gives them an animal name. And so it's a name that gives them anonymity, but also can bond them together. Like, yeah, we're tigers, dolphins. Another really cool feature for language teachers is that if the Quizlet set is in another language, like for example, in Latin, then the animal names will show up in Latin, which is really fun. For Quizlet Live individuals, students can play as individuals and they will also be given randomized animal names. This is really fun and something I did a lot during the pandemic. I think this was really good for me to kind of gauge, okay, this is how students are doing, this is where they're going. I use this still sometimes, but I actually use Checkpoint more as a formative assessment because then I can really see who answered which questions correctly, which is pretty nice. And here are some Quizlet Live group modifications that I use in my classroom. And when I use Quizlet Live, the classroom gets so loud. It's so fun. It's like wonderful, wonderful loudness of learning. One of the things I like to do, though, to have a more quiet classroom is have students act out the answers to each other. And this is complicated, but when they're in a group, they can't speak. They can only act out and they can't mouth words to each other because that's cheating. I also do drawing where I give out whiteboards to everybody and then they try to draw their answers and they can't put in words at all, but they can draw their answers using stick figures. Another one I like to play is around the world. So students are assigned their Quizlet Live groups, but they're not allowed to change their seats. So they just have to kind of talk across the room to each other in their groups, which is fun. And finally, I like to play target language only Quizlet Live. So students can talk, but they can only speak in the target language. And there's so much fun circumlocuting in Latin when we play this and in Greek. So it's really, really fun. So if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. All right, I'm seeing a lot more questions. Someone asked, why do I create a class every year? Because I use Quizlet so often. And again, I keep everything in those folders. So that's really helpful for me. Paulina asks if there's a level between Quizlet Free and Plus. I think it's just Free and Plus. Please correct me, Linnea, if I'm wrong. Let's see. Anita says, Irish is not available as audio. Can I record myself saying each term on their flashcards? Yeah, absolutely. So if you have a Quizlet Plus, you can absolutely do that. Tova asks, where should I save a set that I've copied? To a folder or to my class? And the answer is either one. I like to keep everything in folders just because it helps me to stay organized. But if you want to just save it to your class, you could do that instead. Rosalina asks, can students create their username? Yes, they can only change it once though. So that's something to keep in mind. Rebecca says, if I want my students to translate an English sentence into written SL structure, would I be able to provide multiple options? Actually, you can only do one option at this time, but that's a really good question. Monica says, I want to do Quizlet Live against my students. Can I have two teams, them versus me? I don't think you can, but I often play Quizlet Live against my students just because it's super fun. But I usually play Quizlet Live individual. But you're right, that would be really fun if you could do it like that. I'm not sure you could do custom teams that would do that, but that's such a good question. All right, I'm going to move on to going through this. I'm still hopeful it will have time to answer a lot of questions, but keep the questions coming. And again, if I don't get to your question, I will share my email at the end and feel free to email me. So one of the cool features too about Quizlet Plus is that you can customize Quizlet Live. So you can create custom teams, which I really like, because as a teacher, you know who works together well. You know, you're like, oh, I want this person to work with this person, or maybe you want to make teams that are randomized somehow, but randomized in a way you're doing it, like randomized by alphabetical order, however you're doing teams. You can also switch the terms and definitions if you have a Quizlet Plus account, which is really fun. And honestly, it's just a fun game to play. And again, it's loud, but it's exciting. Oops, I skipped a slide. Hold on. Okay, so I was going to go to Checkpoint, but for some reason, I'm not able to go back. Sorry. Okay, so Quizlet Checkpoint is fun and formative. So students get multiple choice questions, and they have a limited amount of time to answer that question. I really like it because of the immediate feedback. It shows now a leaderboard in between questions, so you can see who's answering the most correctly, who's not answering as many correctly. I really like that for this because I'm trying to gauge where the class is. So it's a great thing to use if you're doing a quick kind of prior knowledge check. So for example, when I was covering an English class and I didn't know where students were in Hamlet, I did a quick checkpoint and figured out that they were in Act 4 and they didn't know anything past Act 4. And that was super duper helpful for me. And so I think that's something that's really beneficial. If someone keeps raising their hand, if you can just put your question in the Q&A, that would be much easier for me. So I just wanted to let you know. Thank you so much. And again, you can add these wonderful multiple choice distractors to Checkpoint. And again, the other thing I mentioned was when you start a Checkpoint, you can ask 12 questions. So after those 12 questions, you can choose to turn on Checkpoint Write, where students can type their answers on their device, which is really cool and a fun new way for students to engage with Checkpoint. And so, again, some ideas for Quizlet Checkpoint: doing a pre-knowledge check, doing a review for an assessment. I was so happy to do that this year for mid-year exams and for final exams. I also like using it as an exit ticket just to see what students understood from the class that what knowledge did they acquire as we went through class. And finally, I really enjoy using custom distractors. I think it's super helpful. Oh, someone asked, when playing teams with the animal icons, does the game time out after the first winner? Better if game continue for allow others to finish? It does time out after the first winner. Good question. Okay, now we're going to talk about Quizlet for interpersonal speaking. So like I said, one of the ways I enjoy playing Quizlet Live is to have students in groups, and they can only use the target language as they answer their questions during Quizlet Live. And so they're doing it quickly. They can have a lot of circumlocution. There's a lot of really good things about it. Additionally, if you're doing it with a homework assessment or something like that, a homework assignment or an assessment review, then students can be talking in the target language about that. So there's a lot of really great ways. Again, students might not be able to say everything wonderfully, but they can communicate in the target language for this, which is super fun. I also really like using Quizlet for interpretive reading. And so I like to use blurring to have students predict what comes next. I like to ask comprehension questions by creating things like this rectangle, and then asking questions about what's going on in this rectangle. And again, using points and shapes to have students target specific points in the text. I also, for some students, have recorded, especially with Latin and Ancient Greek, recorded my own voice with it so that students can listen to the text as they read through it. And so what I'll do is I'll put a text in there and students can listen to it in the target language, and then they can see what a summary of that text might be in English. So that way they can review texts. So that's something that seems to work out really well for them. And another way you can use Quizlet is for interpretive listening. And here teachers who have Quizlet Plus can record their own audio. And it doesn't necessarily have to be what is written. So let's say you can ask a question such as, what is going on in this situation, or where does Maureen want to go? And then you can speak about it in the target language. And it doesn't have to be what's written on the card. You can record your own audio that is not what is written on the card. So you can do a quick interpretive listening assignment for students. You can also use a picture that's actually a QR code to the audio if you're doing that for students. So you can use a picture as a diagram. That's a QR code. That's a way you can use it as well. And finally, if students have Quizlet Plus, they can copy a set and record themselves for pronunciation feedback. I had students do that this year with Quizlet and in ancient Greek, and it was really, really helpful, especially when we were first starting to pronounce Greek. So I could go through their sets and see how they were recording and give them any feedback they would need for that. Another thing that's out there with Quizlet, which is really cool, are expert solutions. And so you can check if your textbook or there are any helpful textbooks out there on expert solutions. And you can share that with your students because there are different solutions that are written up by experts that students can look at. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be your textbook, but you can find other helpful textbooks as well, whatever works for you. Finally, we have the Teacher's Guide to Quizlet. So if you want to check this out, you can download it if you go to this website, quizlet.com/teachers. Now, as I said last time, I responded to 50 emails after my last one. So if I don't get to your question, I am super happy to email you back. And feel free to follow me on Twitter at Latin Tech Tools. I'm also on Instagram at Latin Tech Tools, and my email is latintechtools@gmail.com. And again, if you want access to these slides, the slides are tinyurl.com/Quizlet language 2022. All right, I'm going to pop back into the questions and answers here. Nancy asked, could you show an example of a custom distractor in Checkpoint? So Nancy, the way it's set up is that it would be like a multiple choice question. So you'd have a question with 4 answers. Sorry, I just noticed a marker on my hand. I was painting with my kids. So yeah, so we've got a question and then we have 4 answers. So you would be able to put in the correct answer plus 3 additional answers that would distract students away from what the original answer is, if that makes sense. Sandra Lee asks, if we copy a set that someone else has created, then spot mistakes in that copy, how do we contact the creator to alert them? I'm not sure you can, Sandra Lee. That's a good question, though. I've definitely found that in the past, but I've just corrected it to use for my own. I'm not sure that you can I'm not sure you can contact the person. It's a good question, though. Alpana says, where can I find the Quizlet Live group modifications? Oh, okay. So that's what I do with my students. Those are all just modifications I do with my students. So the acting out and stuff like that, that's just stuff I do in the classroom. That's a really good point. Someone asked, do I ever use Quizlet Plus for summative tests? No, I do not. I use it for formative assessment only because that's really what the point of Quizlet is for review and formative assessment. Diana asks, how do I make sure the students use the target language? I just walk around and listen. And if they're not, I alert them to the fact that, hey, you're not using Latin or you're not using Greek, Greek only, or tantum latine. So that's helpful. Monica asks what my Quizlet username is. I have a whole bunch. I think my most prolific one is Maureen Elizabeth Lamb 1. But if you look up Maureen Lamb, there's about 3 or 4, which are mine, because I've been using this for a long time. Let's see. I'm trying to figure this out. Oh, a couple of people asked my Quizlet for my username on Quizlet. So the entire AP Latin syllabus on Quizlet is under 3 different usernames. So Nicole, I don't know them off the top of my head, but feel free to email me and I'll check it out. Tina asks about the screenshot of text. Okay, so this text itself isn't blurred. What you can do is do a screenshot of text and then blur it out. And in fact, Tina, I've done a video on this for Quizlet previously. So if you email me, I'm happy to share that video with you. That takes you through it step by step. Amy asked, would you individually check students' pronunciation in this? Students can copy a set and record themselves for pronunciation feedback. Yes, absolutely. I was fortunate. I had a class of 6 in my ancient Greek class, so I was able to give them all feedback. But I think that even with larger classes, if you give them just a few, let's say you give them 6 or 7 items and you could check for feedback, I think that's something you could absolutely do. Let's see, I'm looking for other questions. Can students copy and paste the text for Google to translate in the interpretive reading? I'm not sure how they would do that, Claudia, because for the interpretive reading, I suppose they could, but it would be very difficult because the diagram itself is a picture. It's not something that's easily copyable. They'd have to type it out, and that would be a lot of effort. Marlene asks if you can have a set in more than one folder. Yes, you can. There's some stuff on the chat as well. If you could put your questions in the Q&A, that would be super helpful. Anushka asks if we can create classes without Quizlet Plus. Yes, you can. I'm not sure if there's a limit to the classes you can create. I think I have about 20 on there right now, so I'm just not sure. I don't think so, but Linnea, if I'm wrong, please correct me. Let's see. Leonard asked if you can create subfolders within folders. Not to my knowledge. So what I do is I try to do it by by just doing folders by unit. Yvonne's asking about Act It Out. So that's not a feature in actual Quizlet Live. That's just a game I do with my students so that instead of speaking, they have to act out. So that's a feature that I've just come up with my students. It's not an actual feature within Quizlet Live. Christine has asked, what's the difference between Quizlet Live and Checkpoint? Quizlet Live is a competition where students are trying to answer the questions as quickly as possible to get all 12 first. Checkpoint, on the other hand, has every student answering individually the 12 questions in a set amount of time. So that's the biggest difference. Think of Checkpoint more as a formative assessment, and Quizlet Live is more of a formative game, if that makes sense. Let's see. I'm getting a lot of Quizlet Live group modifications. Again, Quizlet Live is the game. There's nothing I change about Quizlet Live. I just change the way students are interacting with Quizlet Live. When they're acting it out, that's just something they're doing in the classroom. When they're drawing, it's just something they're doing in the classroom instead of speaking. Someone asked how many times, Kathy says, how many times Quizlet allows students to change their username? I believe it is twice. Someone is asking, do you have the ability to add more questions in Quizlet Live? No, you can only have 12 questions for Quizlet Live Checkpoint, but you can toggle on the feature so that Checkpoint Right comes up for 10 additional questions. Tova asks if you can customize the animal names in Quizlet Live. You can't customize the animal names, but if you're using, let's say you're using a set like that's in Spanish or in French, then the animal names will come up in the target language. Let's see. Jamie asks, as a teacher, I have Quizlet Plus. My students do not on their computers. Will they be able to utilize Quizlet Plus features if they're in my Quizlet classroom roster? That's such a great question. And they will be able to use the Quizlet Plus features in Learn and Test. And they will also be able to see the custom distractors that you have added to sets within your class. So for the sets that you've added to your class, they will get some of these Quizlet Plus features. That's such a great question. Raina asks, how is classic individual different than classic group? So classic individual means that every person's on their own answering the 12 questions for Quizlet Live. For group, that means students are assigned into groups. And so when they're in the different groups, then they will be working together to answer those questions. Okay, let me see. I have a couple. David asks, is it possible to add another language that isn't standard? I would look through because there are a ton of different languages available, but I'm sure you can reach out if you're trying to add a language that's not standard. And Tova, I don't know about the Hebrew language specifically, but if you can't get the animals to be in Hebrew, I would definitely reach out. Moyer asks, can I move sets from classes to folders all at once? If so, how? Yes. So when you're adding sets, you can add from folder and then just go plus, 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 plus. It is so satisfying. That's why all of my stuff is living in folders these days, because I didn't want to deal with moving each set individually. So it's really, it's so helpful because they used to do it individually. Let's see, I'm trying to see other questions. Oh, printing sets. So super easy to print sets. They have a print option in test itself, or they have a print option when you go to the little ellipsis, the 3 dots in the set, you can go down to print. So if you're doing a test function, there is a place that says print when you look at options. And then from each set, if you click on the 3 dots, you can find the print. That's a very good question. Someone, Roadrunner, asked, can you change the timing for the flashcards? I don't think so. But I would say that I think the timing has gotten better. And it's also really nice. We used to have to wait till like, even after everyone finished answering the questions, we had to wait a couple of seconds before Checkpoint would move on. But now it just moves on as soon as everyone has answered the question, which is really, really nice. Alan, you said, how do you implement the different versions of Quizlet Live? Feel free to email me. Again, I'm happy to help. I also have a previous video that I've done on this that I'm super happy to share. Alex asks, how do you delete a class? It's a great question. Haven't really figured it out yet myself. That's why I have 20 questions in there. I'm sorry, classes in there. But I think it's nice for students to be able to go back and access it. I was actually told by my Latin 2 students this year that they went back and looked at some of their Latin 1 stuff, which was kind of nice for them. Let's see. Okay, I have a lot of questions. I'm getting to as many as I can. I know we're coming to the end here. All right. So I'm sorry, I know we're coming to the end and I'm just trying to get as many questions as we can. Let's see. Do you have to prepare, so Norma says, do you have to prepare a special question answer Quizlet for interpretive reading? I generally do. I like to highlight parts of the text that I'm answering that I'm asking the comprehension questions on. I think that's really helpful. And so then the term itself would be the point on the diagram and the definition. Oh, sorry, the term itself would be the point in the diagram and the question. And then the definition would be the answer to the question. So it's almost like there are 3 elements. You've got the question, the point on the diagram it's referring to, and then you have the answer as the definition, if that makes sense. So please, if you have more questions about that, Norma, feel free to email me. I have a previous video that goes over this that I can send. Let's see. So Nancy asks, how do you hide a set in a class instead of removing it? Ooh, interesting. I have not tried to do that. I have, though, tried to be kind of, I haven't given them all the sets at once. That's one of the reasons I use folders, so that I can go unit by unit and add sets as they come, so that students aren't overwhelmed on the first day of school when they go into a class set and there's 100 Quizlets. So I try to add them as we're going through, if that makes sense. So that's really helpful. Let's see. All right. Well, please feel free. I know we're running out of time. We're at the last minute here. And so I just want to say, please feel free to reach out by email. I'm latintechtools@gmail.com, and I will get to your emails as soon as I can. And please follow me on Twitter for more tricks and tips to use with Quizlet. I post a lot of stuff on there about Quizlet because really it's something I use every day in my classes. It is the tool that curates everything for me. And I think especially as a language teacher, it's extremely helpful. Well, thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. It's so nice to see so many people from so many different places. And again, feel free to reach out. I am very happy to answer your emails. Thank you so much for coming.